I believe the Dolphins have quietly emerged as a Super Bowl contender for next season with the hiring of Vic Fangio. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, consider subscribing and dropping a like on the video if you do enjoy it. We are on the road to 5,000 subscribers, so if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. But what a season it was for the Miami Dolphins in 2022. I think it has an argument to be the best Dolphins this season in probably the last decade. The Dolphins finished 9-8 and made the playoffs, which they haven't been accustomed to doing in the recent years. And even at one point in the season, were 8-3 and seen as one of the scariest teams in the entire NFL. The big reason for their success was the firepower of their offense and how effective it was throughout the entire season. The Dolphins brought over former 49ers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel to be their head coach, and he really impressed in his first year as head coach of the team. He brought the Shanahan offense over to the Miami Dolphins, but with his own little spin on it, and I think we saw how effective that was this year. He still used the common things in this type of West Coast offense, such as the play action, and getting his wide receivers in space, and just maximizing the talent that he has on that side of the ball. But what I thought was interesting was his own little spin on it and how it was different from the other West Coast offenses that we see in the league, such as the Rams or the 49ers. I think the Dolphins' offense last year might have been the most explosive West Coast offense that we have ever seen, and a big reason for that was the play of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who I view as the most explosive duo of wide receivers in the NFL, and even one of the most explosive tandems we've seen of all time. But I think the number one description on Mike McDaniel's job was to fix Tua Tagovailoa and turn him into a very nice franchise quarterback. And in my opinion, I think he succeeded in that, as Tua had the best season of his career by far, and he looked like a legit franchise quarterback. In only 13 games, Tua completed 65% of his passes for 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He also led the league in passer rating, which was the first time a Miami Dolphins quarterback led the league in passer rating since Dan Marino. So in terms of the Miami Dolphins, Tua had a pretty historic year, and it was definitely fun to watch. But of course, his season did not come without some controversy, as now there's some questions about his long-term durability in the NFL. I do think for the fans for the Miami Dolphins and the organization as a whole, I think they feel very relieved with his play this past year, because now they have some hope that he can be the answer long-term for the team. Going into the season, there was a lot of critics and people saying that Tua was not even good enough to play in the NFL. He couldn't be a top echelon quarterback, and he spent the entire season proving those narratives wrong. But of course, now there's something else that he has to prove wrong, which is staying healthy. Tua dealt with multiple concussions throughout the year, and I personally think his health is the number one determining factor of how good the Dolphins will be next season and into the future. When Tua was healthy and playing, the Dolphins easily had a top 10 offense in the league. That's what happens when you combine Mike McDaniel's scheme and what he was able to do in play calling, and also the overhaul of talent that the Dolphins got on that side of the ball during the offseason. Started with tackle Teron Armstead, who is one of the best left tackles in the entire league when he's healthy. That is his concern though, his durability. He often does get banged up and misses a few games every single season, but when he is in, he's a very effective player, and he made a Pro Bowl again this year for the Dolphins. To combine with Armstead, they also brought in Connor Williams from the Dallas Cowboys. When playing for the Cowboys, Williams was more of a guard and a swing tackle, but the Dolphins converted him to center, and he was actually one of the highest graded centers according to Pro Football Focus last year. So getting those two pieces definitely helped the offensive line become serviceable, and it was by far the best unit that Tua Tagovailoa has had since he's entered the NFL. But to also take some weight off of Tua's shoulders, they rehauled the running back room, bringing in Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson in a midseason trade with the 49ers. They both had pretty good seasons. Raheem Mostert had 891 yards for 4.9 yards a carry with 3 touchdowns. Jeff Wilson, on the other end, who was the running back 1 for the 49ers for half the season, he ended the year with 860 yards, 5 touchdowns, and also 4.9 yards per carry. So the Dolphins had some legit running backs to rely on whenever they needed to. But of course, the engine of the offense was the passing attack led by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. What I found really interesting this year was Tyreek Hill had the best season of his career with 119 catches, 1,700 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And you combine that with Jalen Waddle, who had 75 catches, 1,300 yards, and 8 touchdowns, along with 18.1 yards per catch, and you have what I see as the best wide receiver duo in the entire NFL. But if the Dolphins offense was so good and electric, why was the team only 9-8? Why did they have a losing streak in December, and why did they lose in the first round of the playoffs? I personally think it was the play of the defense, which definitely had a down year last season. The Dolphins ranked 24th in the NFL in points allowed per game with 23.5. And you go back to 2020 when the team only allowed 21.1 and was the 6th best defense in points allowed per game. And even just the 2021 season where they allowed 21.9 points per game and was the 16th best scoring defense. You can see how the defense has been regressing over the past 3 seasons. And although the Dolphins dealt with a lot of injuries on their defense this year, I still think they had more than enough talent to be better than what they ranked this year. I think most of the blame deserves to go on the shoulders of Josh Boyer, the team's former defensive coordinator. It seemed like he didn't have a lot of answers to the problems that offense has brought to him. It seemed like he relied on the blitz way too much much, and if it cannot get home, the Dolphins defense was pretty much cooked. And I think that's a big reason why he was let go this year, and the Dolphins were on the market for a new defensive coordinator. So to replace Boyer, the Dolphins brought in Vic Fangio, who is known as one of the best defensive minds in all of the NFL. He's coached for multiple decades now, he's coached multiple top 10 defenses, and I think he's the perfect candidate to get the Dolphins back to how they were performing in 2020 and 2021. The Dolphins made Vic Fangio the highest paid coordinator in the entire league with a 3-year deal and a 4th-year team option. And the scheme that Fangio will bring will basically try to limit explosive plays, forcing opposing offenses to dink and dunk down the field, and then force them into a mistake with the exotic coverages that he's going to use on his defense. Fangio, in an interview with the Dolphins, already said he spent this last year where he was not coaching, developing some new coverages for the defense that he wants to try out this year. And with the players on this team, I think he has a chance to make this a really effective defense next season. If you look at the talent on this Dolphins defense, I think they have viable starters on every single level of that defense. Starting with the defensive line, Christian Wilkins is one of the most underrated players in the entire league, and you combine that with Ed Rushers and Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, who the Dolphins traded a first-round pick for this past season, and you basically have 3 stars on your defensive line. You also have some good depth pieces with Zach Sealer, Andrew Van Ginkel, Melvin Ingram if they decide to bring him back, and even Emmanuel Ogbah, who is the team's leading sacker in 2020 and 2021. He missed most of the season with the biceps tear, but he should be back next year and provide good depth for the team. And then you go to the secondary with Xavier Howard, who made another Pro Bowl this year. I don't think he was as good as he has been in the past, but he dealt with some injuries this year, and I think next year, if he can stay healthy, he will return to being one of the best corners in all of football. And then also one of the best up-and-coming young safeties, Javon Holland, is also back there in the secondary. I'm also pretty high on their other in-box safety, and Brandon Jones, who missed most of the year with an ACL injury. So I think the Dolphins have a lot of talent on that side of the ball, and you combine that with Vic Fangio's play calling, his scheme, and what he's going to be able to get out of these players, and I think the Dolphins defense is definitely going to return to form in 2023. So in my opinion, going into next year, I think the biggest factor for the Dolphins' success is the health of Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins have a ton of stars and talent on their offense, they have a ton of stars on their defense, and now they have an elite defensive coach to match with their elite offensive coach, so they have a good coaching staff, and I really don't think there's a lot to dislike about this Dolphins team going into next year. We already saw this past year how effective the offense was when Tua was playing and healthy. He's going to have another year in the system now with McDaniel, so hopefully the Dolphins defense can step up and return to form and be complementary of the Dolphins offense. I think the Dolphins have all the ingredients to be a very scary team next year. It just all depends on Tua Tagovailoa staying healthy, staying on the field, and continuing to play well. Tua said in an interview last week in the Up and Adams show that he's going to try judo this offseason to learn how to fall safely and therefore avoid more head injuries. He said, "We've kind of got a plan set up. I'll be doing judo on Fridays just so that I can kind of figure out understanding my body and how to fall. I'm not trying to be a dangerous person in that way, just trying to help myself." So let's hope for Tua's long-term health and the Dolphins' success next season and the years to come, that Tua is able to stay healthy next year and long-term, and this judo training actually does help him out in a pretty big way. But I'm going to look forward to watching the Dolphins this year and seeing how the defense performs with new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. And if you're looking for some value for an NFL future bet, I think the Dolphins at plus 3,000 to win Super Bowl 58 is a fairly good bet. But thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Let me know what you think of the Miami Dolphins and if you think they're a serious Super Bowl contender next year, or if you still need to wait and see how all the pieces come together and you still have questions about the team. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.